Uh, okay, that was Maurice's work. Thank you,
Oh, thank
Maurice.
you, Maurice. Anthony, number two. Go
Um,
ahead.
Vlad, you and I are pretty good at riffing. We know each other pretty well by now, and so I feel very comfortable actually to tango with you. We can stand a meter and a half apart, but we can still tango. I am so excited with today's agenda. It's actually unbelievable. And are you okay if I read this little piece out of the newspaper relating to Climate 200?
Go for it.
First of all, huge welcome. So exciting to see you here, Anna. Love what you're doing with Climate 200. It's worth me pointing out to you that Austin Catano is in the room with us. Austin is one of the leaders of SS4C, School Strike for Climate. And they've had 300,000 people turn up at their various strikes around the country, something like 150,000 members across the various socials. And when I first met Austin online, we had a Zoom chat, and I thought, wow, this guy's got an unbelievable amount of insight. I said, can I just double check? Are you actually old enough to vote? And Austin, do you mind if I share your response? He said, no, I'm actually not. I'm only 15 years old. I'm thinking, how's it possible that a 15-year-old gets what needs to be gotten with this amount of insight? And we've got, I would say, probably mostly men, but also a few women who are 50, 60, 70 years old, sitting in a room debating all kinds of things without the level of compassion, without the level of insight, and without the level of, I'll just call it basic problem solving that I saw coming straight out of Austin's mind and Austin's mouth. So, I went for a run in the park nearby a few days ago, and I started chatting with a guy, and he was chatting politics to me, and he said, "We're screwed. There's nothing we can do." And I thought, "Wow, but don't you have a vote?" And he said, "Yeah, I've got a vote, but I'm only one person." And I thought, well, hang on a second. One person plus a few one people all over the place makes quite a few people. And then I picked up the paper last night, and I actually, in the survey where I picked up the paper, I read that, and I went, yes. So let me read everyone what I saw. RCH doctor takes on Frydenberg in Kooyong. Monique Ryan has zero political experience, a 28-page CV, a job tending to sick children at the Royal Children's Hospital, and she believes the right stuff to depose the federal treasurer at the next election. Professor Ryan, aged 54, will stand as an independent candidate in the federal seat of Kooyong, taking on one of the most ambitious MPs in Parliament, Josh Frydenberg. The director of the hospital's Department of Neurology is backed by Voices of Kooyong and Kooyong Independence with funding from the Climate 200 group. And I
Hmm.
thought, you know what? We don't have to uproot the entire system, and I'm not going to purport to know how you and the team are working to get eight or nine or a small group of independents in place that could shift everything. But the thought that everything can be shifted is super inspiring. And when I showed this article to my wife and I said, we've actually got someone from Climate 200 coming to the session tomorrow at Vlad Finn's invitation, she said, wow, I said, wow, and we had a great night's sleep.
And it's more than that, though. It's Anthony. That's just perfect, and it's more than that. And it's well, not just Austin as well, but I was really moved when I spoke with Ursula, not just about all of her 20 years in corporate law and everything, but like with the parents for climate change, and the fact that all of these kids, are doing something. What the hell are the parents doing? And when Ursula was telling me about that, I was just like, this is going to be a mind blowing conversation. Like regardless of what we believe, it's going to be something that's going to really, I think, push everybody's thinking and opinions. And we just want to be able to be really open. And you don't have to agree. We just need to be able to have an open, respectful conversation. So, and I just want to, by the way, before we dive in, I'd like to just welcome Jade as well from AIME. So, hello. They're in the middle of the end. This is their last working day. There was no way they were going to come. And Jade's like, I'll make it. I was like, oh, thank you, Jade. They do
And
incredible work, and I'll open the floor, just give you an opportunity just to share as well, Jade, when we sort of get into it. So that really appreciate you joining.
and
Okay,
Vlad, AIM was in the newspaper yesterday as well. I don't know if anyone saw. I'll leave it to Jade to share the news. You're aware of it, Jade?
am, yeah. So our founder and CEO, Jack, he actually played like semi-professional cricket, but the Sydney Morning Herald published an article that he wrote on the Ashes, and it was about kind of that dichotomy and between Australia and England, and then what that means colonially, what that means for him as an Indigenous man, but also with English roots from his dad's side. So it was a beautiful. I'll share the link. I've got it on my emails. I'll share it. But yeah, it's a really interesting article.
So that means that AIME was in the newspaper twice, because I saw another article where the federal government has pledged, it's $500,000.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you're right. We were in twice yesterday. I'll also share that email as well in the link. But we had something called Imagination University graduation, where we had two ministers yesterday jump on. I forget his name. Is it Minister White? And he wore the beautiful big so he jumped on with Jack and had a conversation, and from that got 500K from the federal government, which was massive for us, especially in pandemic times. So you're right, we were in the newspaper twice yesterday.
Yeah, well, I actually watched that live stream that you had on YouTube. That was awesome. I'm so glad you sent that invite. It was such short notice that I'm not sure if anyone saw, but I'm guessing everyone can sort of follow up and watch it, because that was inspirational, right? Really, really impactful. All right, so what we're going to do, so because we are very much about, when we're not talking at people, we're going to open the floors shortly. What I would love to do is, I'd love to do that kind of what we always do, which is just break out, have a chance for everyone just to meet in small groups. So I just want to make sure, is Maurice there? Yes. Are you okay, Maurice, if we just do groups? How many people do we have? We've got 18. So groups of 4, and 2 groups of 5. Are you okay with that? Yeah, a little bit bigger groups. So we'll only do it for 5 minutes. So everyone just has an opportunity to speak for a minute. In that time, what I would like you to do is, I just would like you to consider, what is the journey that you have had to date, not just this year, but the journey that you've had to creating impact. Because there's nobody on this call that doesn't stand for something. I look at my journey. Ex-Soviet. I was going to wear my Soviet star thing here just for fun, but we're literally refugees. Don't look like a refugee, but we're refugees. Back in 1979, we came here. Parents who had nothing, no money, no language. They sat in Italy for 8 months until somebody said, "Yeah, sure, Australia, we'll take you," and they came. And that was the journey our parents went through. And so I just, that has shaped the kind of person I am very much. And what I would love for you to do with each other is just share that journey. If whatever it is, maybe it's been a wonderful journey, maybe it's been a completely, just totally relaxed. So then why are you here in that journey? How does that journey that you've had come to the point where you're creating impact? So how has your journey to date shaped how you are creating impact today? I know it's only a minute each. It's a very short time, but we have such a full schedule today. I'd like someone in the group to say, I'm going to track time. Who goes first? All right. This is action-packed. You know what it's like when we do our hubs. We don't wait. We don't slow down. Everyone's going to have a minute. Someone, as soon as you get in the groups, I'll take care of time. I'll keep you on track. And if the story is amazing, just get to the point. No hard feelings, because everyone needs to have a voice. Are we good?
Maybe we can notify everybody as each minute ticks over with a message, Maurice.
Will that work, Maurice?
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, perfect. All right. Everybody go meet each other. When we come back, it's going to be action.
Maurice, you okay for me to join room 2? Okay, cool. Lad, you're a genius.
Have fun. Have a good time. Maurice, how the rooms look?
Good. So there's all of them are in 4s, so rooms of 4.
Okay, perfect. Let's just pause the recording if that's not too much trouble. Everybody was in the rooms. Maurice and I were just joking that normally when you put on a timer for a minute, at least one room, somebody's like, okay, that's it, our conversation's done, we're back. No one, we're just going, what's going on? A minute's up, where is everybody? So I've got a feeling that if we wouldn't have had a timer, no one would have come back for another 5 or 10 minutes, I'm guessing. Look,
Sorry,
thank you,
the people
everybody.
in our group were very passionate, so the conversation goes longer when it comes from your heart, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that this is what we really wanted to highlight, was that this isn't just about technology and innovation and so forth, which is, you know, something that there's more to it, because we stand for something. And I just really felt from so many conversations over the last 12 months, people have been wanting to really express where they stand, where they sit, and actually be engaged in a conversation slightly to what's the latest tech that can solve everyone's problems, which is great, but actually, what do we stand for and why are we doing it? So what a way to finish the year off. Thank you, everyone. We're going to dive straight in. The first, I guess, kickoff. And Anna, what I'll do, because there's no way I can do you justice to introduce you properly, but what I do want to say is that Anna is an extremely passionate person. Everything I have seen from the work that Climate 200 has been doing, and I have only been exposed to it for a month. I mean, that's just goes to show how you know, some things are really out of your vision, you know, and it's not, and you know, not something that people get involved with or see because it's just not in their line of sight. And that's Climate 200 is one of those for me, and it's been a wonderful experience to discover. And so, Anna, what I'd love to do is just open up the floor to you. Are you presenting anything? Should we make you co-host? Did you have any slides or anything to share, or are you just going to talk?
Yeah, I could. I was thinking maybe a couple of slides for people who may not know who we are, but obviously, or we can just have, I'm sure many people here know who we are in sort of roughly, and have more interested in the inside info about what's going on. So
let's do that. Let's if you're happy with it, let's just do it as a conversation instead of a presentation, if that's okay. Or did you want to put some slides up? Your call.
Some slides up, and we can talk around it. Just
okay. You okay to make Anna co-host, please? And you should be able to share. So yeah, it's in your hands, Anna. We're very keen. So Anna and I, when we spoke about today, we thought we'll do a quick kind of explanation and background, and then really leave it and try and do as much of this as question, answer, conversation. So what I would like for you to do is that just the audience, as Anna goes through and talks about this and presents, instead of talking just straight out, there's like a hand function. If you go to, depending on what device, it just says raise hand. And we'll be able to see when people have a question. That way we'll just throw to you when you have a question in order of when people put up their hand. That way it just keeps things sort of moving along and gives everybody a chance to have a voice. All right, is that good?
Anna? Sounds good. And I'm going to do this quickly, and you can ask all the questions you like. Because and thank you for having me. I was just saying, I got into the political sphere field. It was through Zali Stegel's campaign. So we were co-founding that campaign. A small group couldn't stand what was happening in an electorate with Tony Abbott as our, so we decided to walk the talk and do something about it, which obviously was very successful. And on the base, so I would say the win of and success of Zali and what she's done since then has created the impetus for all these movements coming up, and also Climate 200. So, and even the fact that I'm invited to speak to a group like you, it shows, because politics has always been something that's, you're meant to always say you're bipartisan. But in our mind, this, where we are today in Australia, in our mind, the biggest opportunity we have at the moment to really change the dial on climate and many other things is actually by changing the way Parliament looks through a strong crossbench. Anyway, so I joined Climate 200 and I've been working with Simon for about 6 months or so, deciding. He created Climate 200 2019, only 5 weeks out of the election. He raised $500,000 and supported a number of candidates. And in the last year or so, we started thinking about how we can expand and improve that whole concept. So it's taken off with a bang, above our wildest expectations. But this is the basic story. There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who's striking at the root. Hacking at the branches. So every year, climate philanthropists and other people, and I'm one of them, have been giving large amounts of money to great causes, great organization. And without sort of diminishing what they are doing, the feeling is that nothing really has changed on the climate front in particular. If anything, we've gone backwards. And Australia remains a climate laggard, to everyone's frustration. John Hewson, who's also on our advisory council, says it quite well. There's no doubt this government governs for its mates. And our philanthropy, or climate philanthropy, is routinely undermined by the vested interests. We know the huge amounts of money that Clive Palmer is putting up. It doesn't necessarily mean he wins it, but he does get his very, way when it comes to his investments, like the Galilee Basin, where he spent $6.4 billion for a coal mine. So what we're saying, it's time to strike at the roots. So if we want to see real climate action in Australia, we actually need the right people in parliament. So imagine if we had a parliament where the clear majority of MPs back decisive science-based climate action. And the really interesting thing, and this is sort of probably the key slide in here so people can sort of understand that it's actually achievable. So currently, if everything remains equal, which it won't, but it probably will look quite similar, all we need is 3 pro-climate independents in addition to the crossbench we have at the moment. And that would force the coalition to rely on the support of at least 1 independent. And if the ALP wins, they would actually need the support of all 8. So it's achievable. And why independence? You hear a lot in the media at the moment, all sorts of things. We are front for Labour and Greens, independents are inefficient. But if you really go through the history in Australia, a lot of good policy has been created when there has been either from the crossbench or when there has been a minority government. And some of the things is Zali's climate bill and many other things. It's good for the democracy. These independents, as we've seen with Zali, they're accountable to the community, not party officials. Every vote for them is a conscience vote. Everyone, if you speak to someone like Zali or Cathy McGowan, they tell you the story about it. When you walk into Parliament, there are a wall of pages on each side, one for Liberal, one for Labour. And these pages are for the backbenchers or the MPs, and it basically tells them how to vote. So that's a really interesting take on our representatives who basically only vote according to party line. It's good strategy, and I like to talk a little bit around, because I think sometimes there is a misconception about what Climate 200 is. We are not a party. We haven't created any of these movements. We haven't found these candidates. They are actually true community movements. And many of them, the ones you see launching now, they've been working for over a year, usually with the community groups, to find a candidate, to create the campaign, and to launch the candidate. And at the moment, I think you've seen it's North Sydney, McKellar, Wentworth, Hughes, Hume, Goldstein, Flinders, and now the last one is Kooyong. And there are more sort of coming up, but those are the ones that are probably more advanced. So they are proper. And I guess the team in Wentworth, we've sort of mentor them to some extent and just try to give them our learnings from the Warringah campaign. And then Climate 200, we are the superchargers. So in terms of, because it's quite hard to raise money in many of these seats. So that's the Climate 200 role, is basically to provide the funding so that they can run proper campaign particularly because they do not have the resources, obviously, as the big parties. So, and the other thing that's probably worth mentioning is we often call that we, fronts for Labour and Greens. Not the case. These campaigns and the candidates, if anything, they're all in Liberal seats, very sort of center-leaning, maybe even small L candidates. But what they all have in common is they do want something done on climate. They do want something done on integrity and proper transparency in Parliament. They are women. They usually campaigns run by women, so they do want to see something happening on the gender equity side. They happen to be all in Liberal seats at the moment, but that, if there was a good independent running in a Labour seat, Climate 200 would absolutely consider funding that sort of that campaign as well. It doesn't matter who ends up in government at the next election. If it's Labour, the independents will hold their feet to the fire as well to make sure they deliver on climate. So what we do, the main activity is direct campaign funding, but we also look at some strategic communications where we will do some larger campaigns which position independence as an effective, credible and desirable solution to breaking the deadlock in Australian politics. We also do some analytics like an engagement with the different groups. Partly it's like polling and other things, and it's partly for us so we can evaluate where to spend our donors' money, but it's also to be able to maybe help them with the resources they need. And then it's also a few other things like capacity building and other things. So what we want to see, this is what this whole independent, they call it the Climate 200 movement, but I would say it's an independent movement. Climate 200 is a supercharger and a support organization, but we want to build a crossbench that holds the balance, to create a powerful crossbench that holds the balance power and secures pro-climate policies for Australia. And that's it probably from me. So
amazing. Okay, you just press your stop sharing and then
there was
it. Oh, wonderful.
So just please go ahead, ask me questions, and and the gossip and the insights or whatever you want to know. And if anyone would like to see a proper presentation, we do them regularly, so just get in touch with me and I invite you to one of them.
And that was awesome. And I remember when I joined for the first time, when it was Ursula invited me to the meeting and I saw that, I was just like, wow, how is it that I've only just discovered this? But one of the things that you mentioned that has stayed with me from the very first time is this, and I've written it down here, which is that accountable for the community, right? So it's accountable to the community. And it seems like a logical thing, but it's amazing as we look now how that message has been lost, how that, that what they stand for has been disappearing in the background. You think that any politician will say, I'm accountable to the community, but we see otherwise, I believe. And so that has been that's really resonated. Could you comment on that? And then I'll throw over to the questions.
Oh no, 100%. It's almost, to me, almost as important as the climate side of things, but because having lived in an electorate now represented by Zali compared to someone from the big parties, it is hugely different and so refreshing. And that's exactly what it is. She would say always, it's almost like a service organization. She represents her community. She's willing to do it to the, and take some uncomfortable stands.
An actual public servant.
What was that?
The public servant.
She is a public servant. She always, and the way her office services her community, the way she services our community and listens and takes forward. I mean, she's a tough woman, so she's not scared of taking, I mean, she even, people can agree or not agree, but she took a big stand against border closures because a large part of her electorate, where almost 40% are expats like me. And not everyone agreed with that, but that was an important thing for her electorate to sort of take up into parliament.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and people can agree or not agree with that, but that's important for her electorate. Yeah, hugely important, and yeah, a key factor in what we're doing.
Thanks, Anna. What I'll do, so Lisa, so I'm just going to run through, the hands that are up. Lisa, if you just want to unmute, I don't know if your video works or not, just let us know sort of, what your background is and your question. Go for it. Well, you're on mute at the moment, Lisa. That's okay. When Lisa's back, maybe taking a quick bathroom break. Anthony, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Vlad.
Go for it, mate.
And thank you, Anna. My background interest is in corporate governance, and but the question I have is, thank you for the presentation, but what's the connection, if any, between the Voices for movement and the Climate 200? It seems you're both working in the same space. Are you connected?
No, not connected at all. So I think Climate 200 sometimes is misrepresented as being sort of the puppeteer of this whole movement, and so is Voices, to be honest. So the Voices groups are pure, they're true community groups, and they tend to be the first sort of embryo of a campaign. So quite often there will be a Voices group who are just a grassroots community group, canvasses the community for what's important, taps into usually a bit of dissatisfaction, and then they branch out, or there's a separate group who ends up then forming as a candidate or a campaign running type of entity. And they quite often, they're different and separate, and but they quite often would talk, and one is a community movement and the other one is like the candidate and the campaign. And for Climate 200, we work with the candidates and the campaigns. So we have I would say, talking about governance, we have a relatively sort of strict and well thought out process in terms of how they can apply for money and how they are, what we look to be eligible, but also if we think they can be successful. So we don't actually have very much to do with the Voices movement at all, to be honest.
Awesome. Thank you for the question, Anthony. Julie?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Anna. That was terrific. I have heard about Climate 200 for a while. I'm a non-exec director. I was just wondering, so there's two core things for you to back a candidate, which is about transparency in government and about climate. Is that right? Those two things. And then everything else, that you would campaign on, other policies, is that up to the person concerned to form their election pledge, if you like, based on their community? And then do you put support around that to help them, articulate, communicate, and all of those things?
Again, no, we haven't, but that's exactly right. I mean, the candidates, the things we're looking for is obviously climate, so they need to have that as an important policy. Integrity, again, like Helen Hines, who just put forward and was dismissed in terms of a federal ICAC. And we also, because all of these candidates actually are women, and the campaigns have been started and run by women, it's the whole issue about gender equity and what's happening, how women are treated in parliament. So that's an overall very high value type of thing. But apart from that, all the electorates are different. If you speak to someone Helen Hines in Indai and Zali in Warringah. It's city, it's regional. They hold certain values in common. They always support each other, or most of the time, but they don't always vote the same. And regional health is probably the #1 issue in Indai, and climate is the #1 issue in Warringah. So for Climate 200's point of view, we look at this, we assume the value alignment, but then we look at their how, if we think they can be successful, and we have, it's part art, part science, but we have a seat rating tool, and we purely evaluate them on the basis of that. In terms of policy, they develop their own campaigns. We're looking at ways at maybe being able to, because we've been so successful in fundraising in particular, we're looking at ways of maybe being able to provide some other resources to them that maybe, digital or otherwise as needed, but that's as needed. Their need come from them, not from us.
Yeah, but it's a support network, which obviously is really important. It's a bit scary out there, I would imagine, if you put yourself up.
A support network is from us, of course, but it's actually, and again, I think Climate 200, I shouldn't say this because I'm Climate 200, has taken over the narrative a little bit too much. There's huge support network between these candidates and the campaigns. They share learnings, they talk to each other, they cheer each other on. And Warringah, there is some of the team of the original team of Warringah spent an enormous amount of time as well to sort of, because we had to learn as we went, when no one had really done what we did. And now we try to sort of formalize, blueprint it to some extent to make it a bit easier for them. But they are true, so there are lots of resources around, and some of them come from Climate 200, and some of them come from community and other groups. It's as good and refreshing and positive as it looks, to be honest.
That's really awesome. And actually, so thanks, Julie, so much for the question. There's, as you're talking about, there's such a strong community group support in the background as well. And I was actually waiting for that question and that comment to come, because it's such a perfect segue to, the Parents for Climate Action and the Students for Climate Action. Yeah. So what I would really love to do, Anna, if I might just ask Ursula to maybe jump on, in the control seat for a minute. So thank you so much. I'm assuming you're not going away yet. You're sticking with us for a bit. So Ursula is one that, thanks, Anna, so much. Ursula will leave fairly soon, so I do want to make sure that we have a quick conversation and open that discussion and bring those two together. How does that support work? Plus, how do those things come together, in a logical way? So, Robert, I saw your hand come up. I'll come back to you straight after, if that's okay. Ursula and actually, Maurice, are you okay to make Ursula co-host? That's not too much trouble. So, Ursula, you've got a very incredible background, and what I might do is I might just let you just sort of talk a little bit, instead of talking about your 20 plus years in the corporate, in law and fundraising and so forth. What I'd really love for you to do just in this, as you present, just sort of mention how you came to to Parents for Climate Action. I think everybody would love to know, because many people here, even I imagine, if Robert, your question wasn't before, how do you take more action, as the careers transition? I'm hoping that you may get something out of this too. But I'd love to hear from you, Ursula, what that journey has been to date as well, not just what Parents for Climate Action is. If you could share that with us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. And I've just got a few slides and 5 minutes.
Yes.
So my background is corporate law, capital raising and scaling businesses. I was aware that there were some serious issues with climate, but I thought that the right people were dealing with them and doing the right things. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be involved in the Zali campaign 2019 and realised the rate of the climate crisis and the rate of solutions we need are both far more urgent and far more is needed. So my personal journey has been, what can I do, business, corporate law, capital raising, scaling, how can I use those skills to help climate? And one of the things I've been involved in is Australian Parents for Climate Action. And I really appreciate the opportunity to spend a couple of minutes on, well, why this? Why does this matter? What's the impact here? Thank you. Sorry,
It's amazing to have you.
Just moving the slide forward. Okay, so what's Australian? Why do we need Australian Parents for Climate Action? We know from surveys that everyday Australians want climate action. And we also know the Australia we live in, people are somewhat disengaged from politics and don't get particularly involved. And we thought, knowing how important this is and knowing how many Australians are concerned and knowing that one of the best antidotes to concern is action, we can be part of empowering everyday Australians to speak up and have some influence around positive climate action. And so we're trying to empower tens, hundreds of thousands to literally millions of everyday Australians to be more involved in positive action, particularly around political change or political leadership on climate. And our goal is that we and our children and future generations are living as safe, healthy, full lives as possible. So who are we? We've been going about 2 years, and at the moment we've got about 15,000 supporters and over 30 local groups, which are really engaged groups that meet regularly. And importantly, we've got supporters across every Australian electorate and broad socioeconomic, lots of diversity. And why is this important? It's so important, we think, that Australians see climate action as something tangible and something that relates to them and something that they can get involved with. It's not them, it's us. It affects us all and we can all do something. So we deliberately really central, really relatable, really welcoming. What are we doing? We do have some set asks, and we try to, we keep in touch with other climate groups and make sure that we're all basically aligned, because it's actually incredibly important and helpful for both the public and politicians if there is consensus on key issues. And one of the key issues, as we're all aware, is having stronger net zero targets, something by 2030, and then a faster net zero emissions target by 2035. Everyone's probably well aware of how important legislation is. The current situation in Australia is businesses are actually doing, a lot of businesses are doing the right thing for a lot of different reasons. But once we have legislation stronger, that affects government policy, that affects government funding, and it affects many, many decisions, from are we going to support new coal mines, new fracking, etc., through to how are we supporting renewable energy, how are we supporting resilience, etc. We do have some set campaigns, which to give, have really have strong positive impact, and also for some people to kind of galvanise around. So one of them was working with Beyond Zero Emissions on Solar Our Schools, seeking funding at the federal and state level for solar on schools. It's a complete no-brainer in terms of the emissions reduction and the power bill saving. And we've had some great success with quite a few millions being committed at the state level for solar on schools. Another group that's really strong is our submission writing group. So I've done about 25 submissions this year, and some people are really particularly drawn to that as their form of action. And you can see, quite a few different areas that we've done submissions generally around renewable energy and future policy. We also have a parent spokespeople campaign and comprehensive free professional training, because we know how impactful it is if people, everyday people, see everyday people speaking up for climate, whether that's TV, social media, radio, letters to the editor, and also organising meetings with your council, state MP, and particularly your federal MP, saying, we represent your community and we're only going to support you if you're pro-climate, or else we're going to support the pro-climate candidate who is likely going to win. And why am I mentioning this to all of us? The main reason is, if it's relevant to you, that's great, please join. Or it might be relevant to a whole lot of kind of everyday people that you know who are vaguely concerned about climate but just don't have a clue where to start. So we're deliberately central, we're deliberately welcoming. There's other groups that do other things that we support, but we are deliberately a really central, easy, welcoming place. It's kind of the natural home for everyday Australians who are concerned about climate. And there's how to find us online if you would like. Thank you. I'm very happy to take questions if anyone has any questions. The board and our advisory group are all pro bono, and we have 3 paid staff kind of independently funded with grant funding and things too, in terms of our structure and background. Vlad, you're on mute.
That's so unlike me. That's actually, I'm the first person to unmute. That's really interesting. Oh, well, there you go. There's always one, and it had to be me finally for the last one for the year. Thank you so much, Ursula. I think that while people are getting their questions ready, and feel free to put up your hands. And Robert, I think I'll pass to you if you want to, if you put up your hand again, because you missed out on your question last time. One of the things that is really interesting, Ursula, is that, the demonstration of action, as the catalyst for people to go, I can do this too. That, I see someone, I know they're doing it. Okay, I actually have a strong opinion. I too can join and actually participate in a way that is safe. And I think that's where it's an incredible connection between what the Australian Parents for Climate Action are doing and also the Climate 200. If I work in government and I can't be seen to support, I can't be seen to be supporting, not just the opposition, but a completely different approach, a real accountability for the community. Well, there are ways to do this where I can safely do this and still, not put my job and so forth at risk, which will have its own connotations and people have strong opinions about that. But I just love that combination. So maybe, Anna, feel free to unmute as well if you want to comment. But that was the first.
Just on that, one of the most common things people say is, I didn't know anyone else who cared. I'm just so glad to meet like-minded people. Yeah. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Robert, did you want to ask a question or?
No, I was just commenting off the back of Anna's presentation and just noting that there are some benefactors for Climate 200 that put forward some matched funding, and they're getting more and more notable and more and more probably dangerous for the candidates. Naomi Milgram and her children have put up $500,000 in, and she's one of Josh Frydenberg's probably natural supporters, I suppose, both sort of culturally and within his own electorate. So there's some heavy hitters now lining up. And what I think's changed is that there is going to be political attacks on these independents. It's started now. They're being portrayed as Green or Labor stooges, pretty much. And Labor's calling them, the opposite, which probably means that, it's you're somewhere in the middle. But it's interesting that these attacks are being recognised as for the hypocrisy that they present, and the questions even on mainstream media being asked of the of the politicians that are attacking the independent movement are calling out just the fact that their responses don't make sense, from insiders through to Q&A, through to even 7:30 report, which tends to be a little bit, supportive of surprisingly for the ABC, supportive of the mainstream processes. So certainly the political dynamic is changing, and even if no independents are elected, it's really put the electoral people process on notice that about truth, really.
I think the really interesting thing is exactly, so they have nowhere to turn. So the last week in particular, or last couple of weeks, we are suddenly, there's always been, of course, ABC and The Guardian, always been quite interested and quite supportive. But the last few weeks, we've started to see mainstream. We see the Australian, the Age, the Telly, even Miranda Devine, completely different take, which means the movement is now mainstream, and it's very hard, and also rightly so. You present someone like Allegra Spender, true blue blood liberal family, small L type of candidate. It's very hard to turn that into a front for some sort of Labour and Green, whatever you're. So it's become mainstream and an actual political force, which wasn't the case before. So it's really hard now. We either call climate it's either a front for Labour, Green, radicals, or we're climate rich elite. So I don't know really where they don't know where to place us. So, but it's certainly changed over the last couple of weeks, and also the willingness of people who normally would like you were saying, Vlad, you prefer to stay under the radar. So many people have said, very happy to go public, don't really care if you do. And Naomi Milgram is traditionally a very private person. So that's a huge statement.
Yep, I understand. That's very true. And actually, I just wanted to we'll continue talking, Ursula. I think maybe we need to say goodbye because you've got another appointment. So I just want to particular thank you to Ursula for introducing Anna and introducing Australian Parents for Climate Change, Climate Action. And one of the questions I had, which we'll talk to Austin about it, is where does that sit with the student strike for climate action? What that relationship is. So Austin, we may follow you in a minute, but thank you so much, Ursula. Just real catalyst for bringing this conversation to the front. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it.
So glad. And one of the things that inspires me the most is all the different groups and how they fit together, because they're each doing something so important. And School Strike for Climate started before us, and we, Australian Parents for Climate Action, started. One of our goals was to support them better because they're just so incredible. Thank you very much.
It's hard to be a parent of kids who are striking and not stand for something as well. Yeah?
Exactly. And just help galvanise other parents too. Really, really appreciate everyone's time and really appreciate what everyone's doing for climate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ursula. Yeah.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah. And so maybe with that, actually, sorry, Lisa, you had a question. Go ahead if you want to unmute yourself. Go for it.
Yeah, hi, sorry for out and about, but so for those of you who don't know me, my husband and I started ARNI's Recon, and it's free pickup and recycling of electronics in the metro area. And I guess just by way of introduction, just to lead into the question, is the thing that we found, and ARNI's became a phenomenon, and it's not because we're so great, because I'm saying we're not that good. It's because at the time we hit a nerve that people have been told that there's no alternative for a long, long time. So they recycle through the councils because they told that's it. There's no other alternatives. And traditionally, the companies working with councils were basically waste companies that, that kind of pretended to be recyclers, but not really. We almost, everyone really knows, and there's this underlying resignation and cynicism, and I think that is what's been pervading the elections as well. And there's a lot of questions I have for people, and so there are people on this call that I hope to connect with afterwards and have conversations with it. But I know, for instance, Emma Heidi was in Hornsby was running for mayor, and she just, she had a strong showing, but just missed out. She needs Yvonne Weldon for Lord Mayor of Sydney. There are candidates out there that either don't know about this group or haven't reached out. I think that from the conversations we've had with people, and we're now got over 9,000 people in our database. So there's and that's only a small percentage of Sydney, but 9,000 people who are excited about the idea of doing something for the climate and having an access to it. And that's just only a small fraction of what's out there. And I think that it's all been about people's resignation, because there's been it's what can you do is kind of in the conversation. And
that's a great question, Lisa. Yeah, I think that's a real point, that people's resignation to that. And so, yeah, happy, Anna, if you want to comment, or anybody else who wants to unmute and comment, I think that's a really, really valid point. You just unmute, please, Anna.
I'm really sorry, but I'm actually missed a lot of that. Do you want to repeat the actual question?
So Lisa was really, I guess, commenting on how there's a strong resignation that things aren't getting done. I think in a nutshell, that people do recycling, but actually don't believe recycling happens. So people got a platform of we will remove waste, but it's not going to happen. And we've been seeing such a strong shift, and this community has been involved in many projects. Actually, it's incredible. The last 6 months, there are so many conversations moving away from just tech through to what Lisa's talking about, which is, well, we're just going to go pick up waste, or we're going to help councils, see what's the organic waste. How do we deal with that? People are just taking action, but there is a large resignation of people going, just nothing's going to change. So it's just an interesting.
Actually, if I can just be a little bit more clear about that. Sorry, it was that, but it was also that what we found is people want to take action. They are ready. That the time has never been more of an opportunity now, that when people are given a chance to do something, they are ready to do it. And I think that's the thing for people to capitalize on.
I think, I have a very unshamefully singular perspective on this, because I'm looking at it from political side, but I think you're exactly right, that there has been an apathy in terms of not feeling like there's things that can't be done. So I guess 2 comments is, a lot of people call us active hope, and I would say, there are lots of ways to get things done and get involved, but and here's my little pitch, of course, but I would say 2 things. If you're in an electorate where there is a candidate or a group, either to support financially, but even more so, actually get involved in those local campaigns. They need skills, they need money, but they just need basic volunteers to hand out flowers. It's hugely empowering, and it's actually a lot of fun, and you end up meeting like-minded people. I never thought I'd be a person handing out flyers, at the train station, but I was, and I met a huge, these amazing people that I still are very close to. So it's empowering, and the independent side of things, unlike, I think, big party politics is actually very positive and empowering. The other thing, just not quite related, but what's really interesting to see in terms of our donor base, and we have had 6,000 donors or donations. Some of them are very big, and you see them in the papers, but there are lots of other people as well. There are lots of tech innovators, business people, maybe not business organizations, who are doing all these different things anyway in terms from the investment point of view or business side of things, and or a little bit feel themselves being hamstrung by the lack of policy from our government. So there's obviously, and they do quite a lot of amazing things, I would say. I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure. I'm not.
And also, just to add, I think it's important that I would say that in the last 2 months, nearly every day when I have a conversation, and it's kind of reiterating what Lisa just mentioned. This is a moment in time that feels like no other. It's just that everybody is ready. People are ready to do something different. Not just the impact of COVID, where we've had to be very insular and look at ourselves, but just the sheer disruption, the dissatisfaction with our politicians. It's just, this is the time, and it feels really unique. I think Lisa's made a very good point. People are ready. If you're an organization that's doing something unique, you can actually come to the table, and people will jump on and support. It really does feel that way.
I actually have to jump off as well. We're having a Climate 200 meeting, but I just want to say thank you as well for having me. And again, my pitch is, if you live in an electorate where there is an existing candidate and group, please get involved, because this is a moment in time. And the greatest thing you can do is they're great candidates coming up, these women, superb candidates. So get behind them. And if you're not in an electorate with a group, support Climate 200.
Yeah,
and then or do both. And also, if anyone is interested, just through Vlad, get in touch with me, and I will invite you to one of our, presentation with Simon and Byron, and you can hear the full pitch.
Anna, you may have just answered the question, and I know you need to go, but my very simple question is, how can we help? How can Symphony 7 help?
That's exactly right. I mean, we're all about the money, but I would say if you're in an electorate where there is a candidate and group, it's very important that they also have the local support, so it doesn't look like just climate. We're aiming for never contribute more than 30% of a campaign's funding, just to make sure it doesn't look like we are some sort of outside force coming in. So it's very important that these local groups can raise their own funds, but they obviously grow their volunteer network skills, like people like you would have unique skills that you may be able to forward to them. But if not, or both, if you have the resources, come on and support Climate 200, because I think we're going to make a big difference next year in the next election.
Thank you so much, Anna. I think, and that's what we will do, and we will share. And being really, respectful of your time. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my video was off. Thank you so much, and I would recommend to anyone who's interested to even come along to one of those sessions that you host. It just opens your eyes. It opens your eyes to the thinking, opens your eyes to how you can get involved without also, being worried about where do you sit and how will this be visible and so forth. Or you can be really visible and just be right out there. So I really love it, Anna. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. And we'll go on to our website, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. And for everybody,
thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And for everybody else, what we will do is, Maurice, if you are okay, let's do a quick breakout. I'll ask you to do this because I think it's good for everyone to have a quick chat. and then we'll come back and we've got some incredible, conversations, because Austin, this is the time for us to continue. This is where, that impact. And Jade, I hope you've got something to say, because, I'm going to throw to you, right? So let's do a quick breakout. Maurice, just 3 groups. So we'll give everybody, say, a minute each. What I would love for you to do is to say, just share in your world, what are you doing that you're proud of in making impact? Whether you're providing climate impact, whether you're investing, whether you're collecting, waste and starting business, what are you doing that you're proud of, that you'd love to share? And if it's not much, then, well, I help my cousins, my kids, whatever it is, share it. Let's do that. Everyone has a quick minute. Again, somebody takes control of the time. Make sure that no one is taking up all of that time. Everyone has a voice. We'll give you 5 minutes. Maurice, 3 groups. Let's take it away. And if you're okay just with the recording, Maurice, just pause it. That'd be brilliant. Another breakout where nobody wanted to come back. Look at all these smiley faces. It's just amazing. Anthony, look at your smile. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. This is that moment in time where it's really personal. Yeah, it's really personal to people. We're having a break. Most are able to do some travel. Like, we're able to get away and actually just reflect. And the last 12 months has been an incredible journey. So I really appreciate everybody jumping, into the breakout and just sharing, some of that, and then just sharing their personal story with each other. What I'd like to do is I'd like to keep our momentum going. I'd like Austin to maybe unmute yourself. So Austin Caetano, Student Strike for Climate. Many people have heard of what you guys do. And I think this is going to be really important to add this into the conversation. Ursula was pretty clear. The parents not supporting the students didn't make sense, so they had to support. And I think I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself, Austin, how you came to this, and what is the work you're doing. Did you want to present anything on the screen, or are you just going to speak?
Yeah, I actually surprisingly prepared something small. It's just a bit of background, but I can present it.
Maurice, are you okay to take care of it? Yep, go. You're in control, Austin.
Oh, wait, I can't. One sec.
Okay, when you're ready, I'm going to try on this. Jade, we're going to lose you. I didn't realize. Oh, I'm so sorry. Might be back a little. Okay, Jade, if you do get a chance to drop back in, that would be fantastic.
Awesome. So hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Yep, perfect.
Amazing. So I guess I'll just do a really quick background on who we are. As you know, School Strike for Climate. Yeah. So we are formed 3 years ago. Of course, everyone probably should know Greta Thunberg. We were inspired by her, but the first strike we've ever had was in Castlemaine, and the first NAM strike, which is so-called Melbourne, that's actually where I am. That's when we had our first major strike. Our strike has had around 300,000 young people, and well, people from all over Australia coming. And so I guess you would have heard with the Parents for Climate Action, our demands are very similar, like they said. So no new coal, oil and gas projects, including the Adani mine, 100% renewable energy generation and exports by 2030, and fund a just transition and job creation for all fossil fuel workers and communities. Yeah, so we are everyone. We are from every corner of Australia, young people. We're formed of 500 organisers. Then we're separated into our local groups, which would be each state. There's around 200 varying, each state's different. And we work together to demand our politicians take action on our future and treat climate change as what it is, a crisis. So I guess I know the topic of today is a bit about politics, So I'll talk a bit about our election and what we're doing right now. So as you all know, election's coming out soon. We are always involved politically, but we haven't been around to see an election. So the whole basis of us is going to be, we're going to have a strike before the election, but more broadly, we don't just work on strikes. We work in getting young people involved. And so that's why our key goals are enroll young people to vote, have conversations with people about voting for climate, put pressure on all sides of politics to make climate an issue for the election, and make it clear that climate targets around 2030 are necessary for climate action, and reframe the debate. Yeah, and we are huge on young people, obviously, School Strike for Climate. So the idea is getting young people to talk to parents, to grandparents, and get them to understand what each side's doing, what every politician, their electorate's doing. You may see on our social media, we do comment a lot. We are non-partisan though, so we can't exactly say only support these people, don't support these. That doesn't work for us. This, I guess I'll just mention it very quickly, our pledge, which is support from businesses, organizations, groups, anything like that, just agreeing with our demands. If anyone wants to sign it, feel free to. It's also on our SS4C website. And yeah, that's about it of my presentation. But if there's anything else anyone wants to ask or I can talk about.
It's fantastic, Austin. That was short to the point. From I think what we'll be doing, Anthony, can we take note that Austin will be the new trainer for pitch training from here on? Okay, so you may get a couple of calls. Okay, let's see the first question, and Jade's got one as well. So Anthony, and then I'll pass to Jade.
Austin, you'll be pleased to know in our team meetings inside of Symphony 7, often Maurice, who's next to you on my screen, comes up with amazing ideas or just implements a small piece of technology that just changes the whole damn game. And I try to speak French. I'm learning French from Maurice, and he's taught me, well, I've asked him how to say Maurice pour président, which I think means Maurice, it means Maurice for president. Maurice, I hope you don't mind. I might have to change to Austin pour président.
I agree. I second that.
Austin, that is super awesome. I have one question. You mentioned towards the end of your talk that you wouldn't, as a group, you wouldn't promote a particular candidate. What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so it's very hard for us legally, actually. We're not allowed to at all support any party. We would be all gone if we did. So what we do is give information on what each politician's doing instead. And instead of saying, don't vote for this person, we'll say, this is what this person's doing. This is how we can compare it to another person, something like that. So not fully just blurting out, don't vote for this person. And yeah, that should be it. Yeah.
I think that's important, isn't it? That so much of what we've seen is a positive approach. And I think that's important because, there's so much, not just, false information, but just negativity. And I think we've had enough negativity. And it's just enough that people just want to go, what is the road forward? Who's doing the stuff that we actually want to get involved in? And how do we support that? So I think that's actually really critical. So that's a really cool point. And something you mentioned around demanding political action, it's not a negative. It's terrible. It's we need better. We need different. We need to achieve the goals and real impact. Jay, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll just say it's crazy that you're 15 and still in school and doing all this stuff. And you said partisan, I think. I was like, I didn't know that till what that word meant till second year of uni. Still I'm so it's just typical. I just want to know what your school personally is doing, because I know, for instance, we had a few athletes at our school and the whole school got around them. They would watch the events. It was a big thing. You'd want to follow how they're doing. This is as important, if not more important than that. Surely if you're organizing something or there's something happening, the school itself should be rallying around, the leadership in the school should be as supportive. So how's your own school in like response to what you're doing and what you organise?
It's a really good question. My school's terrible, to be honest. No, it's an amazing school. I love it so much, everything about it. But within being sustainable and everything like that, no recycling. They have no aims or anything, and they'll say, "Oh, there's some stuff. They're so amazing." Pretty much like every other politician as well. The support for it, I don't think many schools are supportive, of course, because you're striking from a school, and then you'll see like our first one, which was the major one. Politicians said people won't get learning education if they miss one day of school, but it's pretty much having a one sick day. You're not going to miss a whole year's worth. And then my school, they like to flaunt around that we have a few people from it, but then they don't really support it. Or if they do, they're not directly saying, students, you should join it, you should go to it. They won't close down a day for it. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, that's a really good point. Great question, Jade. Tim, I'll pass your question. I need to give Jade some airplay as well. She needs to go, as many do with the Christmas and meetings. This is the craziest time during the year. So Tim, jump on. Go ahead, unmute, ask the question, and then I'll pass it over to you, Jade, just to sort of talk it through, and then we'll come back to you, Austin, as well.
Yeah, it's a super quick one. And I'm going to like throw one out there, right? So I campaigned on the big issue when I was at high school, which was cancelling third world debt. Did lots of assemblies, made all the teachers cry, got a stack of petitions this high, sent it off down to Westminster. Nothing happened. And you know, I think that there's an enormous opportunity squandered in the energy, conviction, and abundance of freedom of thought where you are, you know, in your phase of life, right? That I think a lot of people, and I'm just going to talk to myself now, as parents and business people, there's a lot that we like to tell ourselves distracts us, and that frankly, right now you're not dealing with, right? But I think the opportunity that you have is actually to focus on what you really want to do, because it's what's most important to you. And so I feel like I'm reparenting myself, right? In the last 2 years, I've actually kind of come back to this almost like rebellious youthfulness, and realizing that all those distractions are just things, and it's what's most important is what sustains us. So how can we take this energy, application, willingness, rebelness, and apply it in a way that's beneficial? So what if organizations offered students who are involved in strikes for climate action internships? Now there's an upside. Now there's a pathway that your school perhaps isn't providing for you. So I'll offer one right now. Right? Anyone that you know that's in your movement that wants an internship involved in leadership development for next year, give me a call.
Yep. And
right, get my details off Vlad. Everyone else is witnessing this. Get my details off Vlad. Like the organizations across Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, LA, you know, a student in LA, right? You want an internship, give me a call.
Amazing. Tim,
amazing.
Would you be able to, in that structure, put down a couple of words in terms of what that might look like? Because I can guarantee you, in this community here, those who are here, I mean, there's just under 20 people here, and people are dropping off, and there's going to be a few hundred people who will watch this video, if not more, and they'll share. People are going to be interested to do the same. If the idea and the structure makes sense, like in terms of, it's the clarity of that, Tim, I actually think that, as a community, there'd be lots of support for that. and other organizations as well. Is that something that, Austin, do you think would be valuable?
100%. Like I think I said in my breakout room, we're not experts, we're not experienced. We rely on that type of stuff, and that's amazing for people as well after doing all their work in here to get experience and get to do all this stuff. That would be incredible.
Thanks, Tim. That's awesome.
Tim,
Really awesome.
sorry, Austin, I've just shared Tim's email address in the chat. Tim, can I go a step further? Can I share your mobile phone number?
Yeah, mate.
Is amazing. And Tim, you've actually inspired me. Thank you for the offer that you just made. Austin and Jade, and I think, Vlad, we should probably extend this also to Anna and to Ursula. I wonder what it would be like. We have a piece of intellectual property called Presentations That Win. It's a piece of IP that we developed over about a 5 or 6 year period. We invested about $250,000 in seminars, workshops, research, and we spent time with, I'll call it the best of the best presenters that we could identify in the world. And we learned as much as we could from them. And based on those learnings, we've built a 9-step system to help get an outcome every time you present. And I wonder whether that would be useful to share with you, Austin, you, Jade, and other people at AIME. And I wonder whether Ursula and Anna might also benefit from it, because if you can use those things to continue doing the amazing things you're doing, that's part of Symphony 7's mission. Might that be helpful?
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually really amazing. And so what I'll do, can we, Jade, you're not presenting anything, you just going to speak, or did you want to present something as well?
No, I'll just have a quick.
Let me open the floor to you, because this is, we're really starting to come full circle, because it's, we've gone right up into that, the candidate space through to, what parents and people do at their level, what are the students doing, and then what are we doing on a global level, because AIM is global. Would love to hear from you, and I think this is the bit that comes right together. And Tim, if you don't mind, we might come back to your climate action initiative with organizations and your vision for that, to wrap up that conversation. So Jade, jump in, love to hear from you, and then we'll take some more questions. Jennifer, I see your question there, we'll come to you after.
Thank you. I will be quick, but Tim, that is like, just when you said that and you're like, there needs to be a pathway, there needs to be something you can build on as a young person. It's so important, because you've got, as you said, rebellion, you've got energy, you've got all this kind of purpose, but sometimes you need to be like paving your own way to find it. But if you get opportunities like that, because people who are at that position recognize it, it's so important. And just as you were talking, I was like, that's what we do. That's what Jack's Mind, our founder, that's what he pushes towards. We've got internships galore for a lot of the young Indigenous kids that come through our program. He's running CEOs and executives to come and partner with us, so they can then form their own, I guess, blueprint for how to be working with young Indigenous or young marginalized people to shadow them throughout the year. So there's all these different things. And again, like, action doesn't lead anywhere unless you've got people behind you. So I think having that support is just super duper cool. So and also thank you for the offer of that intellectual property piece, because again, as like a young person, you've got energy, but sometimes you don't have the skills to put it in practice, and you need to find that. So again, yes, please, I think that's really, really cool. So I've chatted to a few of you before. You're quite familiar, a few of you, with what AIME does. So we're an 18-year-old foundation organization working towards eradicating educational inequality for marginalised communities globally. So we were originally working with just young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in Australia. And then 4 years ago, we went global, and now we're working with over 52 countries around the world with their communities. And it's just been fabulous. We do a whole bunch of different partnering, because we're focusing not on that piece of mentoring only. It's all about that systemic and social change that you can create, and all of you here are very like-minded in that way, that you can't just, it's not just about going to schools and working individually with students, which is the basis and the foundation of it. But again, if you've got these kids coming out with a lot of confidence, flipping the script of their own narrative, but then they get into corporate spaces and it's the same dead, boring, narrative. I think that's something that we're trying to shift as well. So I'm going to jump off that. I will put my contacts in the, you've got them as well that you can share, but yeah, it was just super cool to be in this space. I'd love to connect, or if you want to have a conversation with me, we're always kind of engaged in collecting intelligence and knowledge from people in different spaces. And I just think, yeah, being a young person on this call as well has been really beneficial for me. So thank you for the opportunity, Vlad, and we'll be back in January to present as well. One of them. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a conversation that needs to keep happening. I really appreciate you, Jade, as well. And you know, it's funny how I know I'm about to let you go, but I just have to just put in that throughout this entire year, this 12 months that we've been doing this particular hub, I mean, we're so fledgling. You know, when we started with what are the things, the technologies and so forth that need to happen. But then when we had Emma Fulu, remember, Anthony, you ran that session, and Emma Fulu came, and she's the founder of the Equality Institute, and the work she's doing across countries with the UN. And, you know, what her statement, she's probably going to be like, well, I can't believe you misstated it. But it's something around that there is no way to achieve the SDGs without eradicating violence against women, something along those lines, right? And as we take that narrative and look further into, well, what about all of the youth that are coming up, the next leaders? And what about all of those communities that approach, life and community in a different way, whether it be the First Nations, but First Nations in all communities, not just in Australia. We've got an incredible moment in time where communication is open and there is deep interest. There's deep interest, and organizations, whether they be even the big mining giants, like you look at your Fortescues, they all have to have a point to say, we are going to do something. And this is an incredible moment in time to actually get in and make that impact. So that's why I think what you've put on the table is actually a conversation that has to continue in the new year for our group, not just technology solutions and infrastructure, but the entire social underpinning of that. So Jade, thank you.
Jade, which city do you live in?
I'm in Coffs Harbour. So I was in Sydney, COVID hit, and I was like, see ya, I'm going to the beach. So I'm in Coffs, but I work in New South Wales around when I can travel.
Amazing. Good on you for what you do.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Jade. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So before we just sort of come full circle, are there any other questions for Austin? Go ahead. Oh, yes, Jennifer. Just because I just closed my little script of who's got their hand up. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, great. Excellent. So I wanted to, first of all, thank Jade. That was really great. The insights that you provide were great, but also wanted to comment on Austin's comment about the teachers saying, missing one sick day. And I've got to say that the effect of having a social engagement would actually give your whole education purpose. And the fact that the teacher doesn't get that is quite sad. And the idea of employment now is that how are we trying to engage workers is to give them a purpose. And if we could instill that from a really early age, people would understand technologies and they understand chemistry and science and all of those other things from a completely different, highly relevant point of view, rather than something that's disconnected in a textbook, right? So that was my observation, but I also would like to, I've already had some requests in for a couple of interns. So if there's anybody out there who would like to be an intern for Nakudu, which is a global innovation network, I'm happy to have somebody join in and bring their passion to the table.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Austin, you're going to have like a whole different, set of challenges soon.
Yeah. Everyone's going to be really happy.
Yeah. So I'm really into tech. So tech with a purpose. So if you have anybody who would be interested in that kind of area, just get them to give me a call, and I'll be happy to help. Right.
Jennifer, you put your details in the chat as well, so that way.
I'm just imagining Austin copping a complete serve one day when he doesn't turn up because he's attended and organized a strike where, 50 or 100,000 people turned up, and then going back the following week, having attended another Symphony 7 forum and saying, look, I'm terribly sorry that I wasn't at school last Friday, but I have got 7 job offers on the table, and we've organized 50 internships and job offers for another 100 kids in the school. But once again, I'm really sorry I didn't turn up on Friday.
That's the thing.
That's the way change happens, right?
It is, and we are all very rebellious. Like this entire community, I think, I know everybody personally, and I'd say that there isn't a single one so far that I've met throughout our community that isn't a rebel, and is not tapping into that, that abundance thinking. I think that's actually really important.
At least willing to challenge the status quo completely.
So true. Actually, let me throw something else up, if that's okay. I've got an interesting one too. When I was at school, I went through a program which was extraordinary called the Young Achievement Australia program. I don't know if anyone's seen it, heard of it. And the whole idea was, it was a not-for-profit funded and partnership with industry that allowed either kids at school or kids at uni to go and actually come together with kids from all different schools, create a company, and it would be a competition. But you had to actually create something physically. And a couple of years ago, just before I joined SDGX, I didn't realize, but they had actually just relaunched. I mean, it's a global program. It's a global program supported by, I think it's HSBC Bank, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me if that's on there. I'm not sure, but it is supported globally. But there is some really interesting opportunities where to take that model and talk about that, what you're discussing, Tim, about that internship model with companies, where those who really stand for something, like we're talking about Student Strike for Climate, to give them the opportunity to actually come together and go, okay, and what else can we do? So there's a movement piece supporting the political agenda, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And then what about that, finding the organizations that are supportive of this and actually finding other students in different locations, in different schools. So it's not all just about a school. And so taking that Young Achievement model, Young Achievement Australia model, and actually just flipping it on its head and focusing on the kind of impact. That's something that's really possible. I'd like to actually maybe, I might have a look at that. So anyway, that might be something that we do. Have you seen the Young Achievement thing, Austin? I think it's still around.
But definitely send it to me.
I'll have a look. I'll find it. I mean, that's a fantastic movement as well. It doesn't focus on impact, but it does focus on, creating, companies and doing something real and giving people that experience. Let me come back to you full circle, Tim, because we are going to wrap up on time today. It's amazing that we actually had, like almost 20 people today in the middle of Christmas rush. Some of you, like myself, there isn't a single moment till 6 p.m. without without talking to someone. Tim, maybe you can unmute. Tell us a little bit more about what you're thinking about this climate action initiative.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Just a quick one, just because there's been a couple of concentric circles and a couple of things that Jennifer, you said when we were together in the first breakout room. There's this great Chico Mendes quote that just really sort of beautifully pushes the provocation about everything that sits within social justice and everything that sits within climate change. And it's about like a 25-year-old quote, but it's like, the quote is, if you're interested in environmentalism, but you're not interested in social justice, all you're doing is gardening.
Love it.
Wow, say that again, Tim.
This is not verbatim, but it's along the lines of, if you're interested in environmentalism, but you're not interested in social justice, all you're doing is gardening. Right? So if you're out there planting trees, but you're not looking at something like systemic racism, which is taking Aboriginal land away and clear cutting it so that we can take dead lumber and sell it and make money out of it, and then we go plant nice little saplings and go, there. Now we're good environmentalists. Then basically you're missing the point and you're just gardening.
That's awesome. Wait, I just need to pause you there, Tim. Julie, any comments?
Oh, look, I'm on the board of Greening Australia.
I know, Julie, I know.
They plant a lot of trees
We
too.
plant a lot of trees, and but I do get your point because we do work a lot with Indigenous peoples around Australia because they understand country and the knowledge that they have, and there's a lot of work that we do to empower them and train them and let them work on land. So the social side is very important. I'm
not trying to poke Julie in the eye. I plant lots of trees as well. But I also work in inclusion and diversity and equity, and I sponsor like local Aboriginal employment forums, and this is not me trying to say, hey, I get it, but nothing's simple. There's no one bit that you do, even as one person, the whole thing. So thank you, Vlad, for the invitation. I'll make this brief. So I'm an action-oriented person. You see me, I'm always standing up, I'm always moving, I never sit still. My son's the same, it's a nightmare for my wife. And I'm done talking, I'm done listening. I still talk, but what I also want to do is talk about the many, many, many ways that organizations, which are the vessels that I work through, can be more active and take more action. So with a group of our coaches, who are all climate coaches, that's kind of how we got to know each other, and then more people convened within our organization. We're launching an organization climate initiative. It's going to launch probably around April next year. It's new, novel, pilot, don't know exactly how it's going to play. But what we've done is we've soft launched it by launching 2 polls, one for CEOs and one for leaders within organizations. And what the data from those polls is showing us is that the number one thing that CEOs want is other kids in the sandbox. They want other organizations to collaborate with and run conjoined initiatives, right? And they also do want support from the feds and support from the state government. But what they want more than those 2 things is knowledge of what to do and how to build capability in their organizations. So what we're going to be doing is running an action-based program in small cohorts that will be all about collaborating together, cross-pollinating ideas, sharing information, supporting each other. We'll be working with building capability. We'll be working with providing access to the custodians of knowledge in whatever domain organizations want to play in. And we'll be focusing on the narrative creation piece internally within you as a leader, within your own organization and within your stakeholder group. And we've got a fabulous woman, Claire Marshall, who is a professional storyteller doing a PhD in future creation through narrative, that she'll be sort of hosting that as the SME. So long story short, there's a poll. If you want to be polled, I'll set Vlad, I think probably easiest if I just send you the stuff, and then if it's okay, you can email it out. So if you'd like to complete the poll, please do. If you want to take the poll and then take it wherever you think it's appropriate within your networks, please do, because we definitely want to have a data set here. We're going to run a webinar, at least one webinar in February, to talk about the results, bring some panelists in to talk about what these results mean. And then the initiative, we think we're going to be looking at standing up a
Awesome.
pilot.
Are you okay if we include that and share that maybe in our next newsletter to the Symphony 7 community?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is that okay? Because I think that would be great. And obviously, LinkedIn place. Look, yeah, fantastic, Tim. That's great. Can I ask you something around that? So what about this conversation about the internship piece? Does that fit into that narrative as well?
I think as of about 25 minutes ago, the answer is yes.
And I sure hope so.
Well, no, right. So again, like, I like to play with things, right? And this is how innovation works. So I think one of the things that we could now, and maybe there's another couple of conversations here that need to happen, between you, perhaps, with Austin and others, but perhaps one of the things that we could be incubating within these cohorts is yeah, internships don't come at no cost to you as a business, because you have to facilitate them and you have to hold the space in the right way, and there's various things you have to do, right? But the balance sheet cost is very little. The impact creation piece is massive, and there's lots of cascading compounding benefits. So that could be really interesting partnership opportunity within this initiative for
that's awesome.
people who definitely have heaps of purpose, haven't had it beaten out of them just yet, and organizations that have purpose or are coming to purpose, and well, there you go, right? So
well, that's actually an interesting segue. So Ivana, can I pop you on the spot, right? So I believe you have a new employee or intern, maybe Renee?
Yes, Renee,
right?
she's on the call today.
So let me ask you something. Actually, let me ask Renee, if you don't mind. I'm gonna put you on the spot, right? So you're here, you joined, which is fantastic. Renee, why did you join Tehran? What was your motivation?
Well, it was more personal, like just hearing from Ivana, like the first time we chatted, we kind of connected like completely, like ethically, like we had the same kind of mindset of like what needed to be changed. And I liked her perspective on saying that the change needed to be like coming from like businesses individually, not like so much government. Like, so that's reflected in the way like she's going for like a privatized business model instead of like a government funded initiative. So yeah, that's kind of what brought me into Tehran.
Awesome. And what was your thinking, Ivana? So, like, why start with an intern?
I was starting the business or bringing Renee in.
Bring Renee in.
Well, I think most people here have met Paige, who's our head of sustainability, and my original motivation was I need someone else with that skill set. I actually went out looking for someone who could help fill that gap, and I stumbled across Renee, and like, she fits perfectly with what we're looking for. I need to have a talk to this woman. And she, I've always wanted to have a larger team as well, and we can't get anything done alone. It's as simple as that. And having a team of like-minded people working together towards the same goal, we're going to get things done faster, and we're going to get it done more efficiently.
And I think the reason why I called you out was, when we're talking about the companies and we're talking about, engaging interns, at that really, when they're still at school, moving to university, that age group, there's a learning requirement. There's not just the skills in the work, but there's also about what it is that you want to have impact in. And unless you have some experience and see what people are doing and actually go, wait, hold on, that's my pathway. Now I'm striking because I stand for something, I want to see change, but I also want to get my hands dirty and do something. So who is doing it? What organizations? Could I start my own? Where is there a gap? I mean, this is not just the entrepreneurial way, but it's also that, that community here is somewhere where we need help. Is this something that's interesting for you? And people can really work with a purpose. I think that's what's really inspiring, Tim, and that's why I wanted to call it out, Ivana. It's you need the skills. So there's got to be an education piece people need to learn, but there's got to be also that alignment with, what you stand for as well.
I think it's really important to get involved, like wherever you can. Like if there's an opportunity, that even if it just sparks your interest a little bit, just give it a chance, and you never know like where it can take you.
That's really great. No, thanks so much, Renee. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. All right, so we are absolutely at time. Incredible conversation, and again, I am blown away by the turnout, by the people who've made time in the middle of Christmas rush and meetings. And, many companies are wrapping up today. Others are, just celebrating. So thank you to everyone, and those who have joined and will watch the video later, and those who couldn't. We just thank you, everybody. It's been an incredible year. 12 months of this hub. We have done so many projects together, so many collaborations. I have a whole list, and I was going to probably spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about it, but we're out of time. It's not that important. What is important is that the community are really respectful. We stand for something. People like Austin, Renee, Anna, Ursula, the team here. You know, we've had incredible guests from the largest organizations, from, you know, BASF and Telstra, and, you know, who, you know, from startups that are making incredible change in the world, you know, Carbon Asset Solutions, Red Grid, you know, Blue IoT, you know, it's just, this is the place where collaboration is making a real impact. And we are more and more involved in that circularity of everything we do. And, you know, Tim, I know you've got a lot to say about that. And really, you know, there's the circularity of what we do is, I think, at the heart of true collaboration. You know, no, there is no single point. Everything impacts everything else. And I think you know, we're very lucky as a community to have each other and to be able to actually come together and share and be welcoming to all groups, regardless of which one you're working with, you know, so we're completely open. And I think that's been, I guess, the key to what we've been able to achieve in the last 12 months. And mindful of time, Anthony, I would love to maybe give you the final word. As Symphony 7, who is, you know, the supporter of this, have given us the platform to do this. You know, we are so incredibly grateful.
Wow. I think the gratitude is, well, I know the gratitude is extremely mutual. That I've got to say, you remain one of the most articulate and efficient and engaging facilitators I've met. Today was another example of that. You think on your toes and you give people the space and you make sure you include everyone. So that was huge. And I'll close by saying that yesterday I was really grateful to have a strategy session with Julie Green and with Craig Taplin, and 100% the plan for this coming year and for this coming 3 years is to really scale the impact. We're asking questions around what do we need to do? What do we need to do with our own business model? Where does the focus need to be? Where does the proposition need to be? And one thing is very, very clear, and that is that we are finding the way to really focus on impact. I think we've worked out that our initial vision, our initial model of how we would get the impact might not succeed in the time frame that we've set ourselves, 15 years to 2035. And we're now really working out how do we find organizations who are already doing brilliant things, who, if we can help them get from point A to B, or even from point D to point E, because they're already on their merry way, that we can really dramatically accelerate impact. And today was a great example. You know, we've heard from people who are already doing incredible things, and if we can give them a vitamin D12 and a vitamin C3, and through that they manage to positively you know, explode what they're doing, we feel that we'll be able to get a lot more impact and a lot quicker. So I've loved hearing the words collaborate today. I've loved each of the sessions during the year. We're always grateful to people for investing their time. Time is very precious. And my thanks goes right back at you, Vlad, and to everyone here and to the Symphony 7 community. It's been an awesome year. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everybody. So unless there are any final comments, we'll wrap up, bring it to a soft close. Thank you, everyone. Maurice, feel free to pause the recording. And again, thank you so much for everyone attending.